This is day 6, Friday, December 4th in our Ishtar's Odyssey journey. So remember, he just started off on the caravan. We're going to find out what he does that could possibly mess up the whole trip. This is called error of judgment. Ishtar's feet were sore from walking, and the rumblings in his stomach were starting to hurt. He had been walking next to the camel assigned to him since long before sunrise. He tried to keep several arms lengths to its left, though, because it stunk so bad. In the daylight, Ishtar could see ahead of them some cliffs rising from the sand, and he hoped they wouldn't be climbing those. Here, still close to the sea, there was enough rain during the year for green plants and even a few trees to grow. On top of those cliffs, he knew was a strange land with no water. Kazim was walking 3 camels behind Ishtar, talking with Varta. Ishtar stopped and let them catch up, then fell in pace next to them. His 2 servants were in deep discussion about something Ishtar didn't understand. Kazim, where is the food carried? He asked. With his mind still on the conversation with Varta, Kazim answered absently. The first 2 beasts carrying your food and water, he said. The 3rd is your ride, and the other 5 carry the rest of your belongings and fodder for the animals themselves. Ishtar analyzed the answer as Kazim went back to his conversation. He saw now that the entire caravan was made of a string of 8 camels, with a rope tied from the saddle of one camel to the neck harness of the one behind it, and so forth. It seemed that he had a string all his own, managed by Kazim, Varta, and another man, and that others took care of the other strings. I will have my lunch now, Ishtar announced to his 2 servants. They both looked at Ishtar in surprise as they continued walking. Ishtar, Varta said, lunch is not taken until the bell rings. Well, that's ridiculous, Ishtar thought, and then he decided he'd just have to find lunch for himself. Kazim had said that Ishtar's food and water were being carried by the first 2 camels in his string, so he walked faster until he reached them. The thought of getting near the animals, let alone touching them, almost made Ishtar lose his appetite, but he decided that having lunch would be worth the risk. After several tries, he finally held his nose and forced himself to get close to the camel. The camel's load was bound up in large bundles wrapped in cloth and rope, one bundle hanging on each side and one on top. Ishtar couldn't tell which bundle held the food, so he'd just have to search. And a knot in the rope holding the closest bundle hung inches from his face. So he reached up and gave the knot a little tug. It wouldn't budge, so he pulled harder. Still, the knot refused to release. Ishtar decided he'd have to work at the knot, but it was difficult with the animal swaying back and forth as he walked. Well, this is ridiculous, Ishtar said aloud. Then he walked to the front of the camel, grabbed the rope hanging from its harness, and gave it a hard pull. Whoa, he said as he heard many riders say to their horses. Ishtar, no! It was Kazim who now came running up the line, but it was too late. The camel obeyed Ishtar's command and stopped dead in its tracks. The next camel in line bumped into the first before stopping, and the bundle Ishtar had loosened fell open, spilling hundreds of pounds of goods onto the sand. Now all the camels in Ishtar's string came to a halt. The camels following Ishtar's string, however, didn't stop. Some of them turned to the side and headed away from the caravan. Some of them seemed to go mad and bucked and screamed all down the long line, for as far as Ishtar could see, there was chaos and camels. Ishtar, what have you done? Kazim yelled. Ishtar began to cry. I was just trying to get something to eat, he said. Next came Salamar riding fast on his camel. What he said, but stopped having figured it out. He looked down on the sight with his mouth hanging wide open. Before he could say any more, another man came riding up. What's going on here? Who stopped the caravan? Ishtar saw that it was the short, stout man he'd seen in his father's office. He was red in the face as he jumped down from his camel and stomped over to the scene. Who is responsible for this mess? Everyone stared at Ishtar, who could only say, I. Rasad, Salamar said, addressing the short man. It matters little whose fault it is. What is important now is that we get moving again. What's important is for discipline to be maintained. What's important is for our schedule to be kept. I am the Caravanserai, and I alone will determine what is important, and I tell you, there will be a punishment for this tonight. Rasad was still red in the face and breathing heavily, but his rage had been deflated by his tirade. He looked at the mess again and yelled, "Now, clean this up!" Then he returned to his camel and started giving orders to get the caravan moving again. Salamar sighed and dismounted his camel. "Come," he said to the others, "let us repack this camel." Ishtar was shocked when he realized us included him. It took almost 3 hours to round up all the camels, settle them down, and get them back in the line, and to repack the many loads that had been loosened in the fray. "Why are the camels all so grumpy?" Ishtar asked his father as they worked. "Caravan travel all day without stopping," Salamar answered, "and as soon as they do stop for the night, the camels are fed and watered. So when you stop them, that's what they expected, to get food and water." With the whole company moving again, Salamar pulled Ishtar up to sit in front of him on his camel. "Come," he said, "let us have a lesson in caravanning." Ishtar held his nose against the stench. They trotted up the line toward the front, and Salamar said, "Tell me what you have observed." Ishtar thought for a moment. "I have observed that camels are tied together, nose to tail, in strings of 8, and that there is one man in charge of each string." "Correct," Salamar answered. "Each of these strings is called a file, and the man in charge is known as a camel puller. We have 62 files, so how many camels is that?" Ishtar calculated in his head and then answered, 496. "Excellent," said Salamar. "Why such a big caravan just to carry a few gifts?" Ishtar asked. "Many reasons," Salamar's low voice, almost a whisper, tickled Ishtar's ear. "First, there are many dangers in the desert: thieves, sandstorms, wild animals. There is safety in numbers. Second, we carry a wealth of gifts for the new king, not just a few trinkets. Gold, frankincense, myrrh, all very valuable. So we need many soldiers to guard the wealth. And third, well, it wouldn't be a very impressive tribute to have just 2 uncles and me ride up on 3 shaggy camels, now would it? A tribute to a king must look like a tribute." Ishtar looked behind him in the line of camels extending clear back over the farthest hill and decided this was indeed an impressive caravan. "Which camels carry the gold, frankincense, and myrrh?" he asked. His father looked around quickly. "Hush, do not talk of this aloud. Only a few people even know we carry such a wealth." Satisfied that no one had heard the comment, he turned to Ishtar and said, "I do not know where they are. They are hidden throughout the caravan so that a thief cannot simply steal 1 camel and so get our entire fortune. Only Rasad knows where the gifts are packed." "Who is Rasad?" Salamar took a deep breath before answering. "He is the Caravanserai, the leader of this caravan." "I thought you were the leader," Ishtar said. "I am the leader of the mission," Salamar answered, "but we hired Rasad to lead the caravan itself. He is an experienced Caravanserai. He knows the route to take and the location of every village and oasis. He can read the ripples in the sand and knows exactly where we are and how to get where we are going. We would be lost without him, and he is in absolute control of everything that happens in the caravan. He's also the man who was upset when you stopped us unexpectedly." Ishtar thought for a moment. "You mean the small man?" "I would not say he is small," Salamar answered. "He is far bigger in many ways than most men I know, and he's built like a bear." Then a horrible thought struck Ishtar. What did Rasad mean when he said there would be punishment for stopping the caravan? Salamar was silent for a moment and then said, "The Caravanserai is in absolute control, as I said. Each evening he holds court for various infractions that happen during the day's journey, and then he inflicts punishment." Ishtar gulped. Like what sort of punishment?" "Well, it can be anything from the loss of a meal to a whipping to banishment from the caravan, or in a very serious case, death." And that Ishtar began to tremble. That's the end for today. You have to come back tomorrow to find out what his punishment is, or if he gets one. Here's the conclusion. Ishtar was only thinking of himself when he stopped the caravan, and thinking only of yourself can have terrible consequences. Sometimes it's really hard to put the needs and desires of others ahead of our own. If we don't look out for ourselves, who will look out for us, we think? The answer is that God has promised to always care for us and be with us through every need, desire, and situation. Ishtar has not yet learned to trust his father, Kazim and Varda, and that they will take care of him. The sooner we learn to trust that God is watching out for us, the sooner we'll be able to live an unselfish life that he can both bless and use. Psalm 31:14 says, "But I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God." I'll see you tomorrow.